thanks you guys for being here. We're kind of calling these like God moments between the parishes of St. Mary's and St. Augustine's. So we're just going to talk maybe about 3 or 4 minutes or so. I promise it'll be less time than Lou and I preach. So it'll be short. But can you just introduce yourself for everybody and tell them what you do and what parish you belong to?
So I'm Kerryanna Kerschner. I'm a nurse manager at Upstate Golisano Children's Hospital. I manage the pediatric hematology oncology floor. And I go to St. Augustine's, where I'm also a cantor.
And a great cantor. I find that when she's singing, I try not to sing because it just doesn't, there's no way.
When I was little, my grandmother used to sit me on her lap and sing to me, and apparently I used to cover her mouth.
Really?
Try to make her stop, and she would say to me, I may not sing pretty, but I sing happy.
It's funny you should say that, because we used to do that as growing up too, and my grandmother would sit me on her lap and she would whisper in my ear, please don't sing. Please don't sing. Yeah, so,
but I believe now what my grandmother said. Singing pretty isn't all it's cracked up to be. Singing happy and joyfully and prayerfully, I think, has a lot to be said for.
And it says something about like being part of a community.
Yeah.
So that we're part of a community with all our faults and scars and failures, and yet we sing as a group. I think that's beautiful.
And some of my favorite moments as a cantor is when I see that everybody's really singing, and I'll just step back from the microphone because they don't need me to lead, and then this is how I think we are the body of Christ, then, and we're joined in that singing, and it's beautiful enough to bring me to tears sometimes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Dave?
David Nesbitt. I've been in Baldwinsville for almost 16 years, and we started coming to St. Mary's, and it's been home for us. We used to sit in the back pew with our little babies, and now we're front church sitters now. So I'm in private practice. I'm a colon rectal surgeon, so I'm at a bunch of different hospitals. So that's what I do.
So as we start, I just want to start with a question, because you're really part of the group that's on the front lines, and we hear a lot about this in the news. And one of the purposes of having this conversation today is that we wanted to reach out to people that we know that are a part of our faith communities and hear firsthand, first, what should we be praying for, and what should we hope for, and the experience that you've had, not only like personally, but the experience that you might have had with people that are really inundated at their own particular hospitals or hospital centers. So what's the experience? What do you hear? What you hear from people on the front lines, either here or maybe even downstate or other places?
Yeah, it's so I've been on a couple of webinars. Through those webinars, I've talked to some surgeons who are in my field in Italy, and heard from some of the surgeons. I've heard from a surgeon in Seattle, a surgeon in New York, and so those are some of the hardest hit areas in the world. And what they're experiencing is pretty dramatic in terms of, when people are dying from this, where they have to put the bodies, and it just goes so against our respect for the human body. Not that they're doing anything disrespectful, they're just trying to maintain, but that's kind of scary. So locally, they're staying overnight in the hospitals. I still have the luxury of being able to go home, so which is nice. In our local hospitals, it's eerily quiet because we're preparing for, so there's no non-urgent surgery, so everything's pretty quiet. I had a surgery yesterday, and it was almost like the operating room, it was almost like we were walking on the moon. So we had our suits on and protective gear, and so it's very different. In terms of I'm in a private practice, so we're still seeing patients. There's patients that I don't want to necessarily have come in because they're elderly or they're immunosuppressed, but some patients need to be seen. There's an urgent situation, or we're doing a lot of telemedicine now, or trying our best to. But some patients are anxious, so they may not have something that's urgent, but they have, maybe a new diagnosis, and we can't schedule a procedure for them right now. So, in addition to the people in other parts of the world and the people in our own hospitals, I think we have to pray for the people who are, still going through some medical issues. There's still heart attacks and strokes happening, and there's still infections happening. So we still have to take care of those people, and so to pray for the people that have anxiety because I have something else going on other than the coronavirus.
So Dave, it's like a two-tier thing, right? So the first tier is that, our immediate concerns from what we hear about the coronavirus. But the second piece is all those individuals that really struggle with those things that happen every single day. And that, those things are no less serious, the heart attacks and the cancer and all those things. We have people from both parishes that have been diagnosed with cancer. And, they've been in for surgery. And it is hard because, your family can't visit you. And so I've had families say that prayer is so important. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that there's a two-tier, and that one of the most important things we can do is to pray for people that are part of either of those tiers.
Yeah, there's some amazing stories from nurses who, are they're at the bedside, minute by minute, and they're sharing with patients who can't have family come in and visit. So that's really remarkable.
Yeah, Kerryanna, you're at Golisano, and my 20 years of priesthood, I've had the great privilege of being with families at Golisano, and it's amazing work that the healthcare professionals, but also everyone that works there. You've been at those places like Dave was talking about. You've been at the bedside when families struggle with end-of-life issues and families struggle with cancer. And I get emotional when I talk about it, but can you talk a little bit about that in the context of where we are today?
Sure. So we're in a completely unprecedented time, right? And we're all in the mode of learning as we go. And our daily lives in healthcare have changed just as much as everyone else's. And we're trying to figure out how to balance keeping everybody safe and giving them the care they need, and doing all of that in a way that minimizes risk. So lots of interesting, I feel like we need to pray for those families who can't have the routine surgeries, the tonsillectomies and things that aren't urgent, that they've been planning for, all of those kinds of things that people do on a routine basis. And certainly for kids that are families that are home with their kids all the time, because they're not used to that.
That's the benefit of Dave not being in the house, is that all the kids are home, and you love your family, and they're a great family, but Jody's probably saying to herself, Dave, this is not fair, right? She might.
It's a whole different challenge, right? And so on my floor, where we have children that are in sometimes for very, very extended stays for cancer treatment, they have the ability to only have one of their parents with them, and once they're there in the hospital, they can't leave at all, unless we make special exceptions, and we've been able to do that in a couple of rare times. So it's real, this is already a burden for families, right? That their child is experiencing cancer and needing to go through that treatment, and now we're limiting their social supports and their ability to be together as families. So we're trying to do everything we can to ease that, giving them meals and things, but it's not the same. It's a hardship, and it's balancing that with what's needing to be done for the greater good. But the anxiety is there for everybody. Yeah. And
so we pray for two things, right? So for those families that have those routine surgeries that can't come in, and pray for those families at Golisano and anywhere else where it's maybe one parent and you can't have the familial support that you're used to.
Sure.
One of the things you mentioned is about anxiety. And before we started, you and I shared the reality and experience that we both have, and it's hard to sleep lately. And you lay in bed, and I'm sure other people are having the same challenge. But when we think about the anxiety in our lives, what would you say to the communities of St. Augustine's and St. Mary's about one thing that they should pray for that from your perspective is really important, that might alleviate some of the anxiety that we feel every single day? Can you think of, just end with one thing that you would ask everyone to be mindful and to pray for?
I would say that we just take time to listen and talk to each other, so however that might be. I think, one of the things in medical care and even in home life or not seeing friends is, there's no handshake, there's no hug, there's no, pat on the shoulder. And like in the medical field, there's a lot of touching, and so some of that's missing. I mean, we still have to, in the hospitals, we still have to touch our patients, but there's less of that, and so I think the thing we have to do in place of that is to just be present and listen and talk to each other. And it could be over the phone or anything.
I agree. I think presence, for me, it's gratitude. I think it's prayers of gratitude for all of those little or maybe big blessings and abundances in our life. We have so many of the kind of big distractions that we partake in, shopping and all of those things are gone. And it might feel burdensome until we stop to think about how richly blessed we really are if we have our health and we have our families. Most of us in this country are pretty blessed.
Absolutely.
We have our community that we'll be back to at some point at our church, and electronics. Like the 1918 pandemic, people didn't have electronic communication to stay in touch.
Right.
We do.
Yeah.
There are so many really incredible blessings that we have. And I think for me it's being present in the moment and being grateful for what we have.
I think that gratitude is really the key. You do mention about electronics. If anyone wants to be more humble, just go on Zoom and see your face. Right? I mean, honest to be, seriously, we had a family Zoom thing last week, and I don't want to be on the video, so I just shut it off, and my family's going to know this now. I said, I'm sorry, it's not working. This video doesn't work. I'm sorry. But I thought that we would end just with that idea of gratitude, and maybe we could just end with a prayer. And on behalf of the communities here at St. Mary's and St. Augustine's, we're so blessed and grateful to have you and all that you do and all that you minister, and just taking the time today. So we're so in the prayer. Is that okay? So Almighty God, we come before you. We thank you for the blessings of this day. We ask that you continue to be with us in good times and times of challenge. And we ask that you continue to bless Kerryanna and Dave and all those healthcare professionals that are on the front line. Help them to recognize your presence and feel your comfort and your strength and your peace. And we ask this in God's name. Amen. Thanks, guys. Thank you.